Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another non-central classic. Today we're going to be making an experimental New York pizza. Be using this sourdough starter here. Not traditional, obviously, but I feel like just the discard alone is going to add some nice flavor to the whole situation. And then other classics, we got sea salt, yeast, a mix of bread flour and whole wheat flour over here, and some sugar, and also another key addition, some vital wheat gluten, just to bump up the protein content, because standard bread flour is only like 12-13%, whereas I feel like the pizzerias are using like 15 and plus percent protein content, so it's gonna help us out a lot. And then for cheese, we got whole milk, low moisture mozzarella, hard to come by, and also expensive. And then a mixture of that and part-skim as well, just for texture purposes. And yeah, it's gonna be another experiment today. So first thing we're gonna do is whisk up our dry ingredients. So we're gonna start off with just the bread flour by itself. And we're making two roughly 16-inch pizzas. So for that amount, we're gonna be using 500 grams of bread flour. Just weigh it out over here. Just for a little bit of flavor, we're going with just 50 grams of whole wheat flour to this business. We're throwing in the gluten. To scare all the gluten intolerant fellas out there. Bump this up to about 20 grams of that in there. Our salt. It's gonna be a little salty. We'll kind of need that for the flavor. Just gonna go in with about 12 grams. Sugar is gonna be about half of that, so I'm just gonna do 8 grams roughly. And yeah, that's basically our dry ingredients right there. I'll just whisk this all up. And water, we're doing 360 grams. I forget what the hydration is. I think it's like 60-65%. Then yeast, using active dry right here. And we don't need too much. I'm just going in with about a teaspoon. You can add more, it'll rise faster, but you don't get as much fermentation flavor. And we're gonna go in with our secret ingredient, which I already talked about, using the sourdough starter. And we're not rising this or anything, it's just gonna add some fermented funky flavors that we're gonna miss out on since we're only rising this for like an hour or so. So just go ahead and mix that in with the yeast. It doesn't hurt anything from my experience, but yeah, we're just gonna dissolve that in there a little bit. All right, now it's as simple as just adding our wet into the dry and mixing up. Just gonna use a wooden spoon for this. A nice solid tool, and we're not looking to really do too much besides just incorporate the flour and water together right now. Do if you feel like it. I'm gonna do the YouTuber route of showing everyone that you can just do this with a bowl and a spoon, like they used to do in the good old days. Oh, I'm sure they also spilled a lot back in the day as well. Just throw that back in there. Nobody has to know. Alright, once you run into this stage, it's kind of hard to mix and not really much else going on with it. You can just go ahead and loosely cover it, and we'll get back to this in about 10-15 minutes. So it's been 15-20 minutes. I've taken a shower, moisturized, all that jazz, and this is what the dough's looking like now. So it's pretty sticky still, obviously. We're just basically gonna work it with the spoon a little bit more and make sure all that flour is hydrated. And that should be the last time we deal with the spoon. And we're gonna get the spoon out of the way. So I'll just work the dough off of it. And yeah, we're just gonna stretch and fold this a little bit and just keep getting back to it every now and then. It's a little shaggy right now, but once we incorporate all the flour and water together, it should smoothen out. Okay, and then once it gets too sticky to work with, You just plop it back down in the bowl, cover it, and then get back to it in about 10 minutes. It's been another roughly 10 minutes, so I'm just gonna go ahead and see what the dough is looking like now. As you can see, it's hydrating really well. It's getting a little stickier. And yeah, we're just gonna keep going at this with a wet hand. Switch back to the wide angle because pretty sure in the last shot you couldn't see the thing that well, so hopefully now it's a little bit better. My wife is out of town right now. Usually she films for me, but right now I'm recording this solo. So yeah, we'll see how the solo arc goes. But yeah, we're just gonna keep doing this every 10 or so minutes. Right now, as you can see, when we stretch it, the dough is tearing. But ideally, we want to develop the gluten and get that to be a lot smoother. And so yeah, once it gets to the point where it's kind of a little too hard to work with, you feel like you've roughed up the dough enough, I'm just gonna put it back in and cover it. Let it sit for another 10 minutes. Alright, so this is the fourth stretch and fold now at this stage. And it's looking pretty slack now. And I sprayed down the bowl just to moisten everything up a little bit. But yeah, as you can see now, we don't really have to pick it up much. We're just lifting the corners and folding it in on itself. Thankfully, it's not really sticking in my hand. So, alright, so once we're done, turn it into a ball, bunch it all up, plop it down, and throw the lid on. Okay, stretch and fold number, I don't know, 5 I think at this point. Nothing much to say here. I'm just gonna go through the motions again. Change up the camera angle. I'm gonna let it rest for another 5 or 10 minutes. And then at that point, I'm just gonna split it up and then into the 2 dough balls that we'll use for the 2 pizzas. And then we'll be ready to bake after that. Another 10 minutes. Now we are going to divide out the dough. So I got my scale back here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna lift up the dough, put it on top of the scale like this. Hopefully it's still centered. And then we'll just tear out the weight with the empty bowl. Throw in all of our dough right now. And that is roughly 950 grams. So yeah, now we just take our little dough ball and I'm just gonna tear it by hand. Yeah, it's still a little sticky, but not too bad. Clean off my hands here, and that is at 445, so take some off, add it back on. Yep, and that should be good. And I'm gonna take this dough ball half and stretch it into a smooth ball. And you see any air bubbles like this, you're gonna wanna pop them. You don't want any super large air bubbles in the final product, so make sure you do a good job squeezing all this together and making it a really nice tight ball. And I'm just gonna lightly add a little bit of oil to the bowl and then slosh this around, coat it so it doesn't dry out too much. Also, I think it'll help us stretch it out later. Alright, there's dough ball number 2 done and dusted. We just cover and get back to these in like half hour. Assembly time. It's been actually about 45 minutes rather than the half hour that I was estimating earlier. But here is what the dough looks like now. As you can see, hasn't risen too much. Honestly, you could probably leave this in for a full hour. I think that'd probably be better, but I'm hungry and I need to eat. So all we're gonna do is just lift this slightly from the edges and just dump this out onto this cutting board right here. And that small little bit of oil that we added should help this to be a little bit easier to work with. But since it's sat for a while, it's nice and bubbly and soft and stretchable. If you don't let the dough rest, it's gonna fight you at every step of the way. And what I'm trying to do here is just stretch it out, roughly speaking. And if you're wondering what the screen is for, that's the forbidden technique I was talking about earlier. My whole goal with this process is to make it as clean and simple as possible. So I don't like flouring the whole countertop and doing all that jazz. So this is a little technique that I'm trying out to try and make it as clean and efficient as possible. So once it's roughly stretched out into a loose pizza shape, I just put the screen on top of the cutting board. And as far as I know, I don't think most pizza places cook their pizza like this. But inside the oven right now, there's a steel preheating. And what I'm doing now is stretching out the dough onto the screen. And I'm trying to leave a pretty sizable crust, and we're just going to stretch it from basically around the crust, but on the inside of it. Use the areas where the crust is, or where the dough is a lot thicker, and stretch it out. And yeah, just pull it off to the sides. And we definitely want to do this slowly so we don't get any tears. But this is where if you had a lot of bubbles earlier in the dough, you get a lot of pieces of thinner dough where you could potentially get holes. So I think doing a nice long fermentation in the fridge is probably better. I think you get some more even bubble formation, but hopefully if you work the dough well enough, you can avoid the worst of it. So yeah, we're just stretching it out, and like I was saying earlier, there's a pizza steel preheating in the oven. I got it set to max, and all we're gonna do is just, once we build the pizza, there is a rack below the pizza steel, so we're gonna let it cook on there, let the dough set for around 3 minutes so that the bottom of the crust gets set and the pizza should hopefully release from the steel. And once it does that, then we can slide it off directly onto the steel so it gets that direct heat on the bottom, and hopefully should give us the texture that we're looking for. Okay, and right here I got my pizza sauce. It's just canned San Marzano tomatoes that I've mixed up. I got the whole ones, and I just mixed it up with some oregano, salt, and sugar. I'll put the amounts in the description. And I had to cook it down because it was a little bit watery, but depending on the brand that you use, you might not have to do that. I tried using it straight out of the can with this particular brand, and it was yeah, a little too soupy. So if you have a very watery, if you have really watery topping on top of your pizza, the crust ends up being pretty soggy at the end. So hopefully this should prevent that by using a thicker sauce. Smaller spoon here to just spread it over to the edges. I'm gonna get all up in the corners to the edges of the crust. Got Romano cheese going on top. The Pecorino. Crucial layer, often overlooked. Just going in. This is hand grated, by the way. Probably don't want to use the coated stuff that they have in the stores sometimes. But yeah, that's just going over the whole pizza. And today we're just making cheese ones. So yeah, this is the full fat on this side. So I'm gonna do primarily that one. So just piling it on. Don't want to go too thick in any one place. I'm just gonna cover up the areas that look a little rough, and just try to clear off the screen. Once the cheese starts sticking to the screen, that's when it becomes like impossible to slide off. So All right, that is it. Okay, we are over to oven cam right now. I'm preheating at 550 for like an hour now at this point. And the steel is right here. I'm gonna put the pizza on the screen right here on the rack below. Slide that in. Okay, so the timer is up now. Just gonna go ahead and, as you can see, the crust is nice and poofy right now. And pull this out with a pair of tongs. Oh, that looks really nice right now. And as you can see, it's sliding off. So what we're gonna do is grab our pot holder and grab the screen, and then use our spatula over here to try and shimmy this off onto the steel. I want to be really careful here not to rip the dough, but just work with it. Okay, I'm just gonna sit on the steel now for a little bit. Okay, so as you can see, try to do a few takes, and I keep messing it up, but here's a fresh slice. And yeah, as you can see, a little bit dark on the bottom. Could definitely fix that by putting it on the steel for a little bit less. I think 2 minutes might have been a little bit too much. So if we take it off maybe like 30 seconds, a minute earlier, should be just perfect. It's really crunchy on the bottom, and the crust is like the perfect thickness, and the cheese isn't too overbaked on the top. Honestly, I think it came out really well, all things considered, and I think the cheap method really worked out, and I would really recommend this one, so give it a try.